Okay, I think we can get started and we'll just let everybody file through. But hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Kanisha Liu. I'm the marketing manager for Connie. I'm super excited for everybody to join us today. We are recording today's session and I can send that video after today. We're going to be diving into a lot of really interesting data about career stalls. I think it'll be a really good chance for everybody to learn about their fellow product managers. I'm going to go ahead and put up a quick poll just to get a feel for what everybody wants today's structure to kind of be like. And so I'll give a little bit of time to answer that. We can either do a little bit more presentation, we can do a 50-50 split, or we can do more of an AMA. This is really fun watching the data. It looks like more people are looking to do more 50-50 split. Okay, looks like for the most part, people want to do 50-50 split, but very barely edged out 80% presentation, 20% AMA. So that's really valuable information for us. I'll share that. Thanks for responding. We got a good idea of what you guys want. Okay, and I'm just going to introduce Connie. I have the pleasure of introducing her. Connie is the Chief Product Officer and CEO of Product Maestro. She guides product leaders to build their influence, communication, and leadership skills through storytelling. Previously, Connie has spent 20 years in product leading team, 20 years in Microsoft and Atlassian and other companies leading product teams. She's told stories as a keynote speaker at eCornell, public stages like Google Tech Talk, Health 2.0, Product Management Festival. She's been a panelist at Women in Product, Product Pub, and the Practical Product Podcast. So I could go on forever about all the things she's done. Today, we have the pleasure of having her lead our conversation around product managing career stalls and how to escape them. So without further ado, I will hand the floor off to our product expert, Connie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm excited to share some data with you about, we have 200 people, about 200 people respond to this survey. It's where we get to understand a little bit more about how people are feeling career stalls in their product careers and understand a little bit more about how they overcome them in the cases where they've experienced it and overcame it. So I'm happy to share this data with you. We're actually still collecting more data so that we have a comprehensive set of information that we can share out with everybody who fills it out. So if you have friends or connections who are in product and are curious about this topic, please do forward them the survey that you took so that they can also participate. Let me give you a little bit background about the data set itself, people who responded to the survey. So we have mostly female respondents, which is a very interesting data point itself. You know, I think either female respondents feel more inclined to answer a survey, or maybe female respondents feel more attracted to the topic because they're experiencing career stalls more often. So I think that's definitely very interesting. 72% are identified as self-identified as female. We have a pretty good age distribution. Most folks are in early or mid-career, a majority of which are in the 35 to 45 age. So that's definitely mid-career, and a few, you know, slightly earlier career and slightly later career that have responded to our survey here. We asked about your first job. So the first job and what the title is, and everybody started the first job at a very different age, obviously, as young as under 18 and, you know, as old as 30 plus. So we define first job as one that is on the career track that you wanted to be on, a paying job, a full-time job. And it's interesting that of the almost 200 responses, we saw titles across the board. Like we had a class teacher down here, we had people who worked at banks in the front line doing customer service, we had software people, we had management consultants. Really, the titles were all over the board. So it really comes to show how diverse product management professionals are in their background. In fact, only 6% of the people responded had a proper product management title when they started their job. So, certainly people ask like, oh, how do I get into product? And you as a product person probably knows like, doesn't matter, start somewhere and then get into it, right? Because we all learn on the job. And the current job that people self-report, and most of whom are in product, we actually had a very diverse seniority set. So we had folks who are early product managers all the way to senior to director to VP who have responded to the survey. And this is the age distribution of our respondents, as I shown earlier. So a lot of folks come from different backgrounds and then move their way into product, and we're able to ladder up in their product career. We asked about promotions. One thing that's interesting to understand is how quickly people progressed in their career. In the final report, we definitely want to make a deeper cut of this against the age ranges that people report, because obviously if you're early in your career, you're going to have fewer number of promotions. If you're later, you should have more. This is an early share of the data, and so we're sharing kind of on the raw end. But what we've seen right now is that a lot of folks, 53%, have had 2 to 4 promotions. So that's pretty common in their career. And then some folks who have had many more, right, like 5 or 6, including some people who had like 10 promotions or more. We did not define specifically in the question what promotion is defined as. And I think for most people who responded, including people who wrote comments in, they're telling us that they count job transitions as promotions. In fact, a lot of people move companies in order to gain that promotion. And that has been pretty common in the career trajectory for product managers, is to shift companies to attain the promotion. But certainly we've seen people, we also have some who had to stay in the same company and career track promotion in that way. Oh yeah, 7 or more promotions. Kanisha is just telling me. The people who had 7 or more promotions is an interesting group. So they were all over the age of 35, and half of them were over 45. So definitely the more senior of our respondents, and 70% of them are in the senior leadership role now. So you're looking at 7 promotions in order to get from your start point to like a VP type of role. And most of them also began at the age of 22 or younger. So you can kind of, do the math and figure out, they're kind of number of years into the job in order to get into that senior role and in order to get through the 7 promotions. This group tends to feel their career stalls later in their life. So a lot of them promoted really quickly. They had gone through the first, 4 or 5 promotions quickly. And then the last few promotions is like a 2+ year type of wait. And then there's also 60% of the folks are experiencing career stalls at age 45 and older. So many people are definitely feeling when you get later in your career, like you're getting more promotions in the beginning, right? Every year, every 2 years, you're getting promoted. But then it feels like the progress is slower, right? When you get later in your career. And that, I think is normal. I think it's interesting to note that, hey, we're not alone in that feeling, that as we get more senior, we are waiting longer for the next promotion. One of the questions we asked is, well, if you're feeling stalled, are your friends also feeling stalled? Do you find that your friends are stalled at the same time, different time, maybe they're not stalled? And about half the participants agree that their friends have had career stalls, which to me seemed like pretty low. Like I would think, a lot of people, more than, not half, 50 is like almost half. So, you're looking at only half the people thinking their friends are stalled. So that makes me wonder whether, folks are just not talking to other people about it and therefore don't know, or maybe they perceive that their friends are not getting stalled, but that they are. Because certainly when I look at the data, a lot of people are feeling stalled, but yet they think their friends are not. So that's an interesting perception. Certainly something that I've personally experienced, right, in my career is like, hey, I'm not moving forward. I feel like everybody else is moving forward. I'm feeling left behind. But maybe the reality is, everybody's feeling stalled. So 15% of participants says their friends did not stall and that they're moving further ahead. And obviously, 34% don't know. So they're not asking. But that's certainly an interesting benchmark. And, people who are around you kind of set that tone for like, hey, do I feel like I'm ahead or not ahead? Some of the questions we asked, how are you staying connected? Staying connected is an important aspect of being able to move forward in your career. And a lot of people spend time in LinkedIn. This one that's not showing up here, the number one is LinkedIn. And then secondarily, Facebook. So people are staying connected there, both professionally and personally. This is the professional, how are you staying connected? And then we asked also how are you staying connected personally, and then it flips, Facebook's higher in that one. So that's a background on, the folks that answered, how they're feeling right now. And we started asking also later on in the survey, what are you doing to overcome career stalls, or what have you done in the past to overcome career stalls? These are the 4 items that you could choose, and then people could also fill in with their own suggestions on how they go about doing it. And so increasing work responsibilities, getting more work at work, joining professional at work, hiring career coach, or taking a course to upskill were the four primary options that people chose. And of these options that we put up there, 92% of the participants that filled out the survey chose increasing work responsibility. So they asked for more work in order to help them get unstuck. And then 77% of them found that taking a course to upskill was helpful. So the number 1, number 2 were actually these 2 items. Number 3 was joining a professional network, and number 4 was hiring a career coach. Of the answers outside of these 4, the most popular was actually reading and self-learning, which I think is kind of the flip side to this one, right? Getting mentorship, and then doing job interviews, like practice job interviews, possibly for jobs that they're not necessarily going to take, but they go through the interview process, or they do a mock interview with their friends. And then the last one that people do suggested for career development was discussing job opportunities with their manager. That one was fairly popular as well. Standing out at work is very important as a foundation for getting that promotion, right, and moving forward. So here are some of the results that we had. We pulled out some interesting quotes here to share with you. Some folks are saying, be collaborative, be part of a team, kindness, transparency, super clear what the vision is. It's actually quite diverse in how people are approaching it, probably as diverse as we have personalities in the world, and how they decide to stand out at work. And I think that's, if you want to stand out, right, you want to be different. So certainly this makes a lot of sense that people have a lot of different ways of going about it. I thought this was a particularly interesting answer. One person basically said, I don't try to stand out. I just switch jobs every 1.5 to 2 years because I know that's how I'm going to move ahead. And that's another strategy. It's like all options are on the table here. Feeling appreciated. This was not a surprise, but a little bit sad to me that only 35% of the people who answered feel appreciated in their work. 30% said maybe, so I'm super curious what the answer is behind the maybe. Maybe it's some people appreciate me at work and some other people don't, so I'm just gonna average the difference and answer maybe. Or maybe they don't know, and that's also curious. But yeah, how to feel more appreciated. This is certainly a tough one because it's hard to ask for it. And something I do is just put more appreciation out into the world, like be the one to appreciate my colleagues, and build that culture of appreciation in the workplace. As a senior leader, I'm able to also do more in terms of putting in systems like kudos systems and helping people have a place and a framework for giving appreciation, like peer bonuses type of systems, so that they can more formally provide that appreciation. But the day-to-day appreciation, a lot of that is culture. And I'm super curious if you guys want to weigh in on the comments, like how are you guys doing it at work, at your workplace, at your culture, this peer appreciation piece. Only 49% of the yeses were in the senior level. So there's no correlation to seniority here in terms of the yeses and nos. Is pretty evenly distributed. When are people career stalling? The majority, as you can see, is in the 30 to 35 age range, which is not surprising. I'm super curious, what title, at which, and that's something we can dig into the data later, is like what title at this age is are people stalled at? Is it the going from senior to director? Is it going from director to VP? Like, where is that stall happening? And I wonder why it is causing that. From the early look at the data, it certainly looks like people wanting to go from individual contributor to manager is a major hump. And that's typically where people are feeling stalled. And that coincides with this age range here.
I love your insights, Connie. And we actually have a question about career stalls. Somebody said, I feel this one. I feel like my leaders don't appreciate my work and efforts. How can I overcome this or make a bigger impact?
Great segue. We're going to get into the nature of the stall and how people overcome it. So stay tuned. We're going to keep going right here and ask the question again if it doesn't get answered later on. So nature of the career stall. So we just pulled two quotes here, both of whom are women in tech, and it's particularly tough for women in tech. It's very clearly reflected in the answers here because they're juggling kids, they're juggling family, and the burden is still largely on women in terms of childcare right now, and women feel more in the driver's seat in terms of I'm going to cut down on my work in order to contribute to childcare. So it doesn't help that at work, right? There are biases in the workplace. People feel like, hey, I have a kid, and other people are not empathetic to that. And that's certainly really tough. I've personally been lucky in that some of the workplaces, I would say majority of workplaces I've been in have been more friendly, and also the men in the workplace also talk about their children, take care of their children, also take time off. And so they demonstrate by example that they're part of their children's lives, and also, reducing the discrimination that can happen, because then it's more even between men and women. But I certainly have seen this as well. And this one's a tough one. It's finding the right, there's a lot more and more companies who are supportive of a working mother, family focused working mother. And that is probably the culture that you need to go find, because it's really hard to switch culture within a company unless you're in a really senior role, right? Some of the other responses, people have been trying to level up, people get staying stuck for as long as 7 years. So, if you're feeling stuck for a long time, like, know that you're not alone, because certainly other people are having this problem. Progressing from senior to VP is hard. Progressing from director to VP is hard. I think this is all related to the going from IC to management. And then people are feeling frustrated that they just don't have opportunities inside their company, right? I have nowhere to go. I'm ready to move up, but I don't know. I don't know the path to moving up is not defined. One insight though that I think looking at the overall data also is that some folks feel like, hey, I have nowhere to move, I don't know where to go. And some folks, a small number of folks, but some folks are saying, you know, I just switch roles from company to company in order to get what I need. And also that sometimes I don't even try and move up. Like one person actually got promoted up. I don't know if the quote's in here, but one person got promoted up and received more money as a result of it, and then decided, you know what, I don't want to do this new job. Like I got promoted out from product to another role that's people leadership, and I actually gave up the new title and the new comp to go back to what I was doing because I actually really love that work. And so I think part of I'm not really sure where to go, you know, and it seemed like the way to go, the proper way to go is up. Sometimes maybe up isn't the path that would bring you the most joy and bring you the most, you know, what you want in life. So that's certainly something worth considering. And, you know, I'm really surprised and also find it really interesting to see that particular insight, right? Where people are like, you know, I tried to move up, I didn't move up, and then I backed out of it because it wasn't what I wanted. And knowing what you want is, you know, it's also hard, right? But sometimes up might not be the direction. Why do we stall? Why do we stall? A lot of reasons. Management's perception of me, despite upskilling and being qualified. So there's a perception management issue, lack of executive presence. There's quite a few of this, and not necessarily in these words, but similar, right? The soft skill component, the component of, yeah, they just don't really trust what I'm doing. Yeah, I don't think my manager really feels that I can do the next level up. It's very vague, you know, and I think that is part of the not having a clear path, right? At some point in your career, people are telling you, yeah, I don't think that's gonna be your next role, right? Even though you feel really confident and you're doing everything, you're doing 110% of your current role and you're ready to move up, but nobody is believing that you can. And that is a really tough place to be. I've been there myself. I know some of you are there, and it's a really tough place to be. Guess because I don't have the experience or relevant skills, right? The guess because this tells me, hey, I think it's like other people are telling me. I don't click with senior management. So this whole group really is talking about, I don't have the soft skills, or other people perceive me as not having soft skills. Somehow I'm not representing what I can do well enough that people are giving me the opportunity to move up. And that's actually really big for storytelling, really. One of the reasons I teach the class that I teach is because I see many folks, women, minority folks, but really everybody across the board hitting that ceiling in their career because they're like 110% on all the technical aspects of their job. They can write specs, they can lead Scrum teams, they can prioritize, they can make roadmaps, they can do all those things super well, talk to customers, interview, etc. But then management doesn't trust them. No executive presence. I guess I'm not qualified to do the next job. I feel like I should, but people are telling me, so I guess. So I think that's where being able to represent what you're doing and tell the story of what you're doing, it becomes so important in order to overcome that career stall. And you'll see this pattern here. How do I get installed? I open up with my manager about wanting to build the ladder up. They advocate for themselves, right? I sat down with our head of people ops and they advocated for themselves. Here's another one, advocating for myself constantly. Finding out what I truly want and what I'm truly good at, and then talk to peers about that to get feedback, right? So that they can advocate for themselves. And then working through it by completing upskill program, talk to their manager, setting expectations. This one's getting a coach. So you see some patterns here about self-advocacy and then figuring out what you truly want, right? Because it's really hard to advocate. It's really hard to say, hey, you should let me do X because I'm really good at X. It's really hard to make that statement unless you're like, well, I want to do X. And yeah, I'm really good at X. And here's some evidence of why I'm good at X. Then you can go and talk to people about giving you X, right, to do. But until you've soul searched around X, that's going to be hard to do. So this soul searching definitely makes sense. and then talking to folks, right? I think talking to folks, talking to a manager here, working through a coach, like these are all pathways for getting to what is your X, for understanding and soul searching around your X, and then creating the story around X. Cool. Well, that's all of the data that we're sharing today.
That was great. Yeah. And that was perfect timing. We have about 15 minutes. So if anybody else wants to ask any questions, you kind of touched on the last one about like upscaling and trying to advocate for yourself with this person who asked about how can he overcome leaders who don't appreciate their work. We just got another question. Did you experience a stall, Connie? And what did you do?
Yes, absolutely. I experienced a stall. I was already leading. I was not leading a team yet. I was at a company, one of the large ones, and I was getting the pushback. You know, I'm like, hey, I'm ready to move to the next level. I can do all the blocking and tackling. That's all good. I'm ready to lead people, right? And the feedback was, the situation was I joined that company because I really believed in the manager that I interviewed with. But then as soon as I joined, like a week later, he was leaving the company. So it was very unfortunate timing wise. It's sort of a bait and switch in my mind that he didn't tell me that he was leaving, because I kind of joined the company for him. But then he left. And so then I moved in under a different manager, and that manager wasn't bought in with me, right? Because obviously he didn't hire me, he kind of inherited. And so we had rapport, we had a working relationship, and it was fine, but he wasn't going to bat for me. You know, he wasn't like helping advocate for me, and I wasn't advocating for me. That was part of the problem, was I wasn't very good at the time at looking at the work that I do and taking a step back, right? Because I'm just so into like, let's just ship it, let's just do the work, and if I do the work, people will see it. Well, guess what? As a product manager, you know that if you build it, they won't come. You have to go and get them. As a product career person, right? If you deliver the work, they won't see it. In fact, you have to tell the story of what is it that the work that you're doing. So I wasn't able to do that effectively, but I was able to do that effectively when I'm in interviews. So part of what I ended up doing was switching to another company that gave me the opportunity, gave me a team when I joined. So I could start immediately and move up that track. And that was game changing for me to make that, you know, to have that hump, to go over that hump of going from IC to manager. But yeah, it took some self-advocacy. And, you know, I think the self-advocacy came easier for me in an interview situation than in an internal situation, which is what I've realized later on. And so, you know, having understood that, I started learning how to do that internally as well, because it's different. The story you tell about yourself in an interview setting with an external person is going to be different with the story that you tell them, the means in which you told that story, the different channels, the different people that you touch on, and like you have a longer kind of time range to tell that story. So yeah, learning that skill, I think learning that self-advocacy and storytelling skill was pivotal to my ability to get unstalled.
Yeah. And that's like, I think it's really important that you touched on that, because I think that that's something that a lot of people think too, you know, like if you do the work, people will see it, but sometimes that's not always the case. So I think that is a really good point, that you need to start advocating for yourself. And that's a great segue into our next question. I'm currently experiencing a career stall where to move up the ladder, I need to successfully push this initiative, but I feel like I can't get management on board for what I need because I can't present it well. How can I communicate to them better? So kind of touching on, like, we know that we need to advocate ourselves. Like, how do we get to that point?
Yeah.
We do that?
Yeah, the self-advocacy skill and the advocacy for your product, those skills are actually very similar, right? They're both storytelling skills. It's about how do you package up the information, either about your product or your initiative or your idea or your new company, whatever it is, right? This thing, or about yourself and what you offer. Like that's also a product, you know, think about yourself and what you offer as a product as well. So you take that and all the information around that, right? All the features, if you will, around that. And then you figure out, okay, well, what does the person that is listening want to know? So let's take an example. Let's say I'm selling Uber to my grandma, right? I'm trying to get my grandma to take Uber. Well, I know that she wants to go to the supermarket and come back easier, right? I know that she knows how to use her phone, but she's not super comfortable with it, right? So then I would have to, like, for her, the message would be more about, hey, this is a great way to safely get a ride to the supermarket and come back. You can share location with me so I can see where you are. That's so great. Rather than taking a regular taxi, like I can be somebody that you trust, that who can see where you are. So I think it's about selling the features, right? In this case, I'm selling a feature that taxi doesn't have, that Uber has, but that she cares about. Because now she has to go over all the hump of using the phone and all that stuff, and she doesn't want to do that, right? And so, it's the same thing. Like, what is the story you're trying to tell here? What are all the different components of that? And then pulling out the pieces that are important for the person that you're talking to, so that they immediately be like, oh, yes, that's the thing. I want that. And I think a lot of the pitfalls that people fall into, in the class that I teach when I'm working with students, one of the pitfalls that I see is communicating too much information. They do the whole like, oh yeah, grandma, yeah, you download this app and then you do this, and then grandma's lost by the time you talk about that. Grandma doesn't care about all that, right? You want to get straight to the thing that grandma cares about, or your executive cares about, like whoever it is that you're trying to convince, right to the point of what they care about. And that takes practice. That takes actually a lot of practice. Practice not just in speaking and delivering that message, but actually practice in terms of trying the message with different people. And so that's why, if I highly encourage you to check out the class that we have coming up. We're starting one next Thursday. So you have 6 days to apply if you still are interested. But we go through 6 weeks together, where we take, you're the person who asked this question, this is the perfect opportunity to take this idea that you have, that you want your executive team to buy in on, and run it through the 6-week process, right? Where we break down the story itself. We put a narrative, we borrow from Hollywood, put a narrative against it. We help you polish up the voice and body language so that you're ready to present it. And we go through and we basically take the story that you want to tell, that you need to tell, and then we frame it up through the frameworks that we offer in this class, so that you have a finished product and you're ready to do that pitch.
Yeah. And I think that's a really smart way to look at it. Like, you already have that experience. You actually can do it because you do that with product every day. You just need to, learn how to do that with yourself. And we have a lot of questions. We're coming up on time, and I love all of the engagement. So thank you guys for asking all of these amazing questions. Somebody asked, I am the only PM in the company. We've been doing pseudo department head for the last 2.5 years. We just acquired a company that has a CTO, and he's largely taking over everything that I've been doing and is now my manager instead of the COO. So I feel like I'm starting over at a company I've been at for 5 years. It's hard not to feel like I was just a placeholder, and I don't know what's next or how to address it without it coming off as disagreeable towards the new CTO, which I'm not. So that's their problem. Any insights on that, Connie?
Yeah, great question. Whenever there's a company acquisition, a lot of people feel displaced, right? And managing that transition is really key. I will say that it happened to me once, and I did not manage it well, right? So coming out of that, I realized, hey, in that moment when the transition happened, the self-advocacy is like amplified. It's like 1,000x. You need to do 1,000x of that self-advocacy, because guess what? You're basically interviewing for this new job that you're in. You have a new manager, you have a new org, you have a new everything. And it's not fair to you that this is happening, but it's happening anyway. And that's part of the learning that I had, right? The failure that I had was that I didn't see it that way. I didn't realize that you know what, I'm actually interviewing for a brand new job and they're not bought in on having me here yet. It may not be as severe as that. And certainly people want you to feel like, hey, you're still part of the team. But the reality is there is self-advocacy you need to get right in this moment. And so being able to tell your own story to the new CTO, being able to advocate for yourself, saying, hey, I've been here 5 years. What was your accomplishments for the last 5 years? So that can be on the table for discussion on promotion or whatever career trajectory has been promised to you in the past. For 5 years is a long time to spend at a company. Like that is your life that you're contributing to this company. So what have they promised you anything? Making sure that's documented, making sure that the people who advocated for you for those advances, whether it could be title, it could be just more responsibility, it could be whatever it is that they've promised you. How do you make sure that they follow through with that despite the transition? Like those are all things, I just touch on the tip of the iceberg in terms of things you want to think about. But yeah, definitely, thinking through the story of where you are, where you were, and then where you are now, and making sure that that story holds for all your stakeholders so they know and you tell that story is super important.
Yeah, that's great. And looks like we only have 5 minutes, trying to get through as many questions as we can. Somebody asked, when would you recommend moving to a people leadership role in a dev or operations role for a couple years first, and then move back into PM higher up the chain from there?
So the question was, when would you recommend
Yeah.
moving into a people leadership role in a different org and then coming back to PM?
I think in a different role for a couple years and then move back to PM. I think because you were saying earlier that sometimes you need to go somewhere else and then come back to move forward, or trying to stay up in that organization is not always the right answer. So I think they're trying to get some insight there.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
You touched on something there that is interesting, that people leadership is harder in product. If you're an engineer, you get engineers reporting to you by year 2 in your career, pretty easily. In marketing, same, right? But for product, you're a solo artist for a long time before you get your band. So it is a good move if you have the technical prowess to go back into a technical track to get that people leadership experience, is a good move for you, right? That you can uniquely go do. So that you can come back into the product role and say, hey, I have people leadership experience and I have product experience. So now I can be a product leader of other product people, right? If that's open to you, I would take that opportunity, because to have people reporting to you in product will take longer. So if ultimately what you want is to have a product leadership role where product people report to you, then that would be a faster path for you. That said, you're going to go and do a technical track or whatever other track you're doing for a while, right? And then you will get, most people will see, hey, now that's your career trajectory. And so you'll get a lot of opportunities if you're an engineering manager, right? You'll get mostly people saying, hey, move up to the next engineering manager level rather than coming back to product. But yeah, you just have to look for them. It'll be there. Like somebody will see that you have both and give you that opportunity. But the organic, inbound offers are all going to be in your new title, whatever that is.
Yeah. And I love that person was really willing to, advocate for themselves in maybe a different kind of way. And then another question here. Sorry, we have a lot and we might not get to them all, but I love the interest. What's your recommendation for interviewing for a job that specifically calls out for executive presence?
My recommendation, take the class. I'm self-advocating a little bit here. I think the class will help you a lot with executive presence. And why? Because we have a week where we talk about 2 weeks. 1 week where we talk about voice and body language, specifically giving you the crash course. I have an actor come in, and Max, who is the actor who comes in and teaches week 5. He's actually going to be joining the cohort for cohort 5, this cohort. So that's super special. No other cohorts had him join as a participant for the entire series. And he's going to be there. And so, you know, being able to leverage those skills, because if you're on stage and you're telling a story, like you're not just using your words, it's body language, is presence, is that silence between words. That's super powerful that a lot of people don't know how to harness. If you watch any TED Talk, right, just make a note of the silences between the words, and you'll see like how powerful that is. And I think in the business setting, we focus a lot on the content and the words, but executive presence is the opposite. It's not the data, it's not the words, it's everything else, right? So like getting a foundational crash course on what that is, and then having the tools to practice it is going to be really critical. So that's why I really recommend this course for building executive presence.
Yeah, and I think that is very sound, and it makes a lot of sense because you've actually had people who have gotten their promotions after taking your class. And there's just like not enough time in this AMA. But thank you so much, Connie. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have. I want to thank everybody here for joining us, and for Connie for facilitating such a great conversation. I'm really sorry that we didn't get to answer all of your guys' questions, but you can find Connie on LinkedIn, and you can also check out her class, Product Maestro, for those of you who might still feel lost. I think that's a great, resource for everybody who wants to build their influence, enhance communication, improve leadership, storytelling. Her next cohort starts next week. And so I think that would be a really good place to start. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Connie. And I hope you guys have a great weekend.